Airport arrivals. The autumn rain painted Boston's Logan International Airport in shades of gray and silver. Olivia Munro stepped through the arrival gates with the kind of confidence that only comes from rebuilding yourself piece by piece in a foreign city. Paris had been her sanctuary for 6 years, and now she carried its elegance in the way she moved, dressed, and held her chin just slightly higher than before. Her honey-brown hair fell in soft waves past her shoulders, and she wore a cream cashmere coat that whispered of boutiques in the Marais district. The girl who had left Boston at 21 with red eyes and a shattered heart no longer existed. In her place stood a woman who had learned that surviving meant becoming someone entirely new. Olivia's heels clicked against the polished floor as she scanned the crowd. She had told everyone not to meet her. Her parents were visiting her aunt in Seattle, and she preferred it that way. Clean breaks, fresh starts, no messy reunions that dredged up memories best left buried. Then she saw him. Vincent Ashford stood near the coffee shop, impossibly still amid the chaos of travelers and their rolling luggage. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and his dark hair was styled with that effortless precision that came naturally to men who ran empires before breakfast. At 32, Vincent had the kind of presence that made spaces rearrange themselves around him. The weight of promises. Olivia's heart performed an unwelcome acrobatic routine in her chest. She had not prepared for this. Vincent was supposed to be a memory, someone she could think about late at night in Paris and then push away when morning came. He was not supposed to be standing here, real and solid and looking at her like she was both a ghost and an answered prayer. Olivia. His voice carried across the distance between them, and suddenly she was 20 again, watching her brother James laugh at something Vincent had said, back when laughter was easy and the future seemed guaranteed. She walked toward him because there was nowhere else to go. "You didn't have to come, Vincent." "Yes, I did." He studied her face with an intensity that made her want to look away. "You look different. 6 years will do that." She kept her tone light, breezy, the way Parisians spoke about serious things at dinner parties. Vincent reached for her suitcase without asking. His fingers brushed hers for a moment, and the touch sent electricity through her system that she absolutely refused to acknowledge. "My car is this way. I have a hotel reservation." "Cancel it." Olivia stopped walking. "Excuse me?" Vincent turned to face her fully, and she saw something fierce and uncompromising in his gray eyes. "I promised James the First would look after you. That promise doesn't have an expiration date." Ghosts in the rearview mirror. The mention of her brother's name cracked something in Olivia's carefully maintained composure. James had been 25 when the accident happened. A drunk driver, a rainy night, and suddenly the person who had been her best friend, protector, and cheerleader was gone. Vincent had been there that night. He had held James's hand in the hospital and made promises that Olivia had never wanted him to keep. "James has been gone for 4 years, Olivia said quietly. "You don't owe him anything anymore." "Maybe not," Vincent agreed. "But I owe myself the peace of knowing you're safe. So you're staying at my place until you find your own. The penthouse has 3 guest rooms. Pick whichever one you want." Olivia wanted to argue, but exhaustion from the flight and the weight of being back in Boston pressed down on her. "Fine. But only for a few days." Vincent's mouth curved into something that was almost a smile. "We'll see." The drive through memory lane. The drive through Boston should have been nostalgic. Olivia recognized the streets where she and James used to get ice cream, the park where they flew kites on spring afternoons, the bridge where she had her first kiss with a boy whose name she could barely remember now. But all of that felt like it had happened to someone else, in a different lifetime. "How was Paris?" Vincent asked, navigating through traffic with practiced ease. "Beautiful. Challenging. Lonely sometimes." The last word slipped out before she could stop it. Vincent's jaw tightened. "Did you meet anyone there?" Olivia understood what he was really asking. A few people. Nothing serious. I was focused on building my career. And she had been. After getting her art history degree, she had worked her way up from gallery assistant to associate curator at one of Paris's respected contemporary art spaces. She had learned to speak French fluently, to navigate the complex social hierarchies of the art world, to be charming and professional and utterly unavailable emotionally. "I heard about your promotion," Vincent said. "Congratulations on the position at the Harrington Gallery. How did you know about that?" "I make it my business to know things." His tone was matter of fact, but Olivia felt a flutter of something dangerous in her stomach. The penthouse and unspoken truths. Vincent's penthouse occupied the top floor of a building in the Back Bay neighborhood. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the Charles River and the city skyline. Everything was sleek, modern, and impeccably designed. Olivia recognized Vincent's aesthetic in every carefully chosen piece of furniture and art. "The guest rooms are down this hall," Vincent said, leading her through the space. "Bathrooms are en suite. Kitchen is fully stocked. Make yourself at home." Olivia chose the room with the best view, then turned to face Vincent. "Thank you. For this. For picking me up. I know it wasn't necessary." Vincent stood in the doorway, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "It was necessary for me," he said simply. "Welcome home, Olivia." After he left, Olivia sat on the edge of the bed and let herself feel everything she had been holding back. Being near Vincent again was dangerous. It reminded her of the girl she used to be, the one who had harbored a secret crush on her brother's best friend for years. The one who had left Boston not just because of grief, but because staying meant confronting feelings she could never act on. But that girl was gone. Olivia Munro had returned, and she was untouchable now. At least, that's what she told herself, morning light and old wounds. Olivia woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of fresh coffee drifting from somewhere in the penthouse. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then reality settled over her like a heavy blanket. Boston. Vincent's home. The life she had left behind now demanding her attention. She found Vincent in the kitchen, dressed in charcoal slacks and a white dress shirt, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when she entered, and his gaze traveled over her sleep-rumpled appearance with an expression she could not quite read. "Coffee is fresh," he said, gesturing to the expensive-looking machine on the counter. "I have a meeting at 8, but I left my spare key on the table. Come and go as you please." Olivia poured herself a cup, grateful for something to do with her hands. "You don't have to rearrange your life for me, Vincent. I can take care of myself." "I know you can." He set down his tablet and looked at her directly. "But James asked me to watch out for you, and that's what I intend to do. Get used to it." Before Olivia could respond, Vincent grabbed his jacket and briefcase. "There's a car service I use. The number is on the refrigerator. Use it whenever you need." Then he was gone, leaving Olivia alone with her coffee and a confusing mix of frustration and something that felt dangerously close to warmth. The gallery and new beginnings. The Harrington Gallery occupied a converted warehouse in the Seaport district. Olivia arrived on her first day wearing a black blazer and cream silk blouse, her hair pulled into a professional twist. The gallery director, Thomas Harrington, was a silver-haired man in his 60s who had built his reputation on discovering emerging artists. "Miss Munro," he greeted her warmly. "Your work in Paris precedes you. We're thrilled to have someone with your eye for contemporary pieces." The morning passed in a blur of introductions, systems training, and walking through the current exhibition. Olivia felt herself relaxing into the familiar rhythm of gallery work. Here, surrounded by art and creative energy, she could be the person she had built in Paris. Competent, composed, untouchable. During her lunch break, Olivia walked along the waterfront, breathing in the salt air. Boston in October had a particular beauty, all golden leaves and crisp breezes. She was admiring the sailboats in the harbor when a voice behind her made her freeze. "Olivia? Oh my goodness, is that really you?" The ghost of friendship passed. Catherine Wells looked exactly as Olivia remembered, with her perfectly highlighted blonde hair and designer clothes that screamed old money. They had been inseparable once, back when Olivia believed that friendship meant loyalty and trust meant something real. "Catherine." Olivia kept her voice neutral, polite. The way Parisians greeted people they would rather not speak to. Catherine rushed forward, arms outstretched for a hug that Olivia reluctantly accepted. "I heard you were back. I've been meaning to reach out, but I wasn't sure if you would want to hear from me." "Why wouldn't I?" Olivia asked, even though they both knew exactly why. Catherine had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Because of what happened before you left." "Olivia, I was young and stupid and scared. I never meant to hurt you." What Catherine called a mistake, Olivia called betrayal. 6 years ago, in the weeks after James's funeral, Olivia had confided in Catherine about her feelings for Vincent. She had cried on Catherine's shoulder about how impossible and inappropriate it was to love her dead brother's best friend. And Catherine had gone straight to Vincent with the information, thinking she was helping, not understanding that some secrets are meant to stay buried. Vincent had been kind about it. Gentle even. He had sat Olivia down and explained that he cared about her deeply, but only as James's little sister. That he was honored by her feelings but could never return them. That she deserved someone her own age, someone without the weight of her brother's memory between them. The conversation had been mortifying and devastating in equal measure. A week later, Olivia had accepted the internship in Paris. Walls and weakness. "I need to get back to work," Olivia said, stepping away from Catherine's too bright smile. "Wait, please. Can we have coffee sometime? I really want to make things right between us." Olivia studied her former friend. Catherine looked genuine, but Olivia had learned in Paris that appearances could be carefully constructed lies. "Maybe. I'll think about it." She walked back to the gallery without looking back, her heart pounding with old anger and hurt. Boston was full of ghosts, it seemed. Not just James, but versions of herself she had tried to leave behind. That evening, Olivia returned to Vincent's penthouse to find him already home, which was unusual. He stood at the windows, looking out at the city lights, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Rough day?" she asked, setting her bag down. Vincent turned, and she saw exhaustion in his face. "My father wants me to merge Ashford Development with another company. It would mean giving up control of what I've built." Robert Ashford was a formidable man who had never quite forgiven Vincent for choosing architecture over following directly in his footsteps. "What do you want to do?" "Fight him," Vincent said simply. "But I'm tired of fighting." Olivia moved closer without thinking. "James used to say you were the most stubborn person he knew. That once you decided on something, nothing could change your mind." Vincent's expression softened. He was usually right. He studied her face in the dim light. "How was your first day?" "Good. Strange being back, but good." She hesitated, then added, "I ran into Catherine." Vincent's jaw tightened. What did she want? To apologize, apparently. To rebuild our friendship. "Are you going to let her?" Olivia shrugged. "I don't know. Part of me wants to believe people can change. The other part remembers exactly why I left." Vincent set down his glass and moved closer. "You left because you were grieving and needed space. Not because of Catherine." They both knew that was not the whole truth, but Olivia did not correct him. Maybe. The charity gala. 3 days later, Olivia found herself standing in front of her closet, staring at the invitation Vincent had left on her dresser. The Ashford Foundation Annual Charity Gala. Black tie. +1 optional. She had known this was coming. Vincent sat on the board of his family's foundation, and attendance was mandatory. What she had not expected was the handwritten note attached to the invitation. Would you do me the honor of being my date? Just as friends. I could use a friendly face in the crowd. Vincent. Just as friends. The words should have been reassuring. Instead, they felt like tiny cuts. Olivia chose a midnight blue gown that she had bought in Paris but never worn. It was elegant and sophisticated, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt that made her feel like someone who belonged at fancy galas. She left her hair down in loose waves and kept her makeup subtle but polished. When she emerged from her room, Vincent was waiting in the living room. He wore a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, and the sight of him made Olivia's carefully constructed defenses waver. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." The drive to the hotel was quiet. Olivia watched the city pass by and tried to calm her racing heart. This was not a real date. Vincent had made his feelings clear 6 years ago. Tonight was just two old friends attending an event together. Nothing more. Dancing with danger. The ballroom glittered with Boston's elite. Olivia recognized faces from society pages, business leaders, and arts patrons. Vincent kept a protective hand on the small of her back as they moved through the crowd, introducing her to people whose names she would probably forget by morning. Robert Ashford appeared during the cocktail hour. He was an older, harder version of Vincent, with steel-gray hair and eyes that assessed everything like a balance sheet. "So you're James Monroe's little sister," he said, shaking Olivia's hand with a grip that was just slightly too firm. "Vincent has spoken about you. I understand you've been living in Paris." "Yes, sir. Working in the art world." "How quaint." Robert's smile did not reach his eyes. "Vincent, we need to discuss the merger proposal." "Monday morning, my office." After Robert left, Vincent's hand tightened on Olivia's back. "I apologize for my father. Subtlety was never his strong suit. He doesn't approve of me being here." "He doesn't approve of much," Vincent said. "Dance with me?" The orchestra was playing something slow and romantic. Vincent led Olivia onto the floor and pulled her close. His hand rested on her waist, and she placed hers on his shoulder, trying to ignore how perfectly they fit together. "Thank you for coming tonight," Vincent said softly. "I know this isn't easy for you. Being here or being here with you?" His gray eyes met hers. "Both, maybe." They swayed together, and Olivia let herself pretend for just a moment that this was real. That Vincent looked at her and saw not James's little sister, but a woman he could love. That the walls she had built around her heart were unnecessary because she was finally safe. But pretending was dangerous. Olivia had learned that lesson the hard way. When the song ended, she stepped back, needing distance. "I should use the restroom." In the ladies' room, Olivia stared at her reflection and reminded herself why she had built those walls in the first place. Vincent was kind and protective and devastatingly attractive. He was also completely unavailable, bound by loyalty to a dead man and his own sense of honor. Falling for him again would be the worst mistake she could make. By the time Olivia returned to the ballroom, she had reinforced every defense. She smiled and made conversation and stood beside Vincent like the old family friend she was supposed to be. But when Vincent drove her home and walked her to her door, when he brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered goodnight, Olivia knew with absolute certainty that her walls were not nearly as strong as she had convinced herself they were. And that terrified her more than anything else. The morning after pretending, Olivia spent the weekend avoiding Vincent as much as possible in a penthouse they shared. She took long walks along the Charles River, spent hours at the Museum of Fine Arts, and pretended to be engrossed in her phone whenever they happened to be in the same room. Vincent, for his part, seemed to understand her need for space. He worked in his home office, went for early morning runs, and left her alone with her thoughts. But thoughts were dangerous company. They reminded her of how Vincent's hand had felt on her waist during their dance. How his cologne had made her dizzy with wanting something she could not have. How easy it would be to fall back into feelings she had spent 6 years trying to bury. Monday morning arrived with cold rain and gray skies that matched Olivia's mood. She dressed for work in a burgundy blouse and black trousers, armor against a world that kept testing her resolve. When she emerged from her room, Vincent was already gone. A note sat beside the coffee maker in his precise handwriting. Meeting with my father today. Wish me luck. Dinner tonight? We should talk. V. Olivia crumpled the note and threw it away. Talking was the last thing she needed. Talking meant confronting truths that were better left unspoken. Catherine's confession. The gallery was quiet on Monday mornings. Olivia used the time to catalog new acquisitions and prepare for an upcoming exhibition of local abstract artists. She was lost in spreadsheets when Thomas knocked on her office door. "You have a visitor," he said with a curious expression. "Catherine Wells. Should I send her away?" Olivia's first instinct was to say yes. But hiding from the past had never solved anything. "No, send her in." Catherine entered carrying 2 coffee cups and wearing an expression that was equal parts hopeful and nervous. "I brought peace offerings. Vanilla latte, extra shot, no foam. You still drink those, right?" "I do." Olivia accepted the cup but did not invite Catherine to sit. Catherine sat anyway, perching on the edge of the chair across from Olivia's desk. "I know you probably don't want to see me. I know I have no right to show up at your workplace. But I need to say this, and I need you to really hear me." "Then say it." Catherine took a deep breath. "What I did 6 years ago was unforgivable. I convinced myself I was helping you by telling Vincent how you felt. I thought if he knew, maybe something beautiful could happen between you two. I was naive and stupid and I violated your trust in the worst possible way." Olivia set down her coffee cup. "You told him the most vulnerable thing I had ever shared with anyone. You took my private pain and made it public. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" "I do now," Catherine said quietly. "I've spent 6 years thinking about it. About how I would feel if someone did that to me. About how I lost my best friend because I thought I knew better than she did about her own heart. The truth behind betrayal." "Why now?" Olivia asked. "Why come back after all this time?" Catherine looked down at her hands. "Because I'm getting married in 6 months, and I keep thinking about how you should be my maid of honor. How you should be helping me pick flowers and arguing with me about the guest list. And then I remember that I destroyed our friendship over my own arrogance." Despite everything, Olivia felt a pang of sympathy. Catherine looked genuinely remorseful, her perfect facade cracked to reveal real emotion underneath. "Who are you marrying?" "Patrick Chen. He's a surgeon at Mass General. You'd like him. He's kind and patient and he calls me out when I'm being shallow or selfish." Catherine smiled sadly. "He's teaching me how to be a better person. But even he can't fix the mistakes I made before I met him." Olivia stood and walked to the window overlooking the harbor. Outside, boats bobbed in the choppy water, anchored but restless. She understood that feeling. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Catherine." "Not yet. Maybe not ever." "I know," Catherine said, standing as well. "But I had to try." "And Olivia? For what it's worth, I think Vincent was an idiot 6 years ago. The way he looks at you now? That's not how someone looks at their dead best friend's little sister. That's how someone looks at the person they're terrified of losing." After Catherine left, Olivia sat in her office and let those words sink in. She wanted to dismiss them as wishful thinking or Catherine trying to make amends by saying what Olivia wanted to hear. But there had been something in Vincent's eyes at the gala. Something that looked dangerously like longing. Robert's manipulation. Olivia returned to the penthouse that evening to find Vincent pacing the living room like a caged animal. His jacket was discarded on the couch, his tie loosened, and his hair disheveled as if he had been running his hands through it repeatedly. "What happened?" she asked, setting down her bag. Vincent spun to face her. "My father is threatening to pull funding from 3 community housing projects I'm designing unless I agree to the merger. Projects that would provide affordable homes for 200 families. He's holding people's futures hostage to get what he wants." Olivia had never seen Vincent this angry. His usual control had shattered, leaving raw emotion in its wake. "That's horrible. Can he actually do that?" "The Ashford Foundation provides partial funding. Without it, the projects can't move forward." Vincent grabbed his discarded glass and poured more whiskey. "He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows I care more about those families than I do about corporate empire building. So you're going to give him what he wants?" Vincent downed the whiskey in one swallow. "I don't know. I don't know anything anymore." Olivia moved closer. "Yes, you do. You know that giving in to bullies only makes them stronger. You know that James would tell you to fight for what you believe in. You know that you built your company with integrity and vision, and merging with your father's cronies would destroy everything you stand for." Vincent looked at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. "When did you become so wise?" "Paris," she said simply. "I learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to figure out what really matters." Breaking point. Vincent set down his glass and closed the distance between them. "What matters to you, Olivia? What really matters?" The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications neither of them had been willing to voice. Olivia knew she should step back, should deflect with humor or change the subject. But 6 years of running had exhausted her. "Honesty matters," she said quietly. "Even when it's painful. Even when it costs everything. Then be honest with me right now." Vincent's voice was rough, desperate. "Why did you really leave Boston 6 years ago?" "You know why. James died and I needed space to grieve. That's part of it. But there's more. There's always been more between us, and we both know it." Olivia's heart hammered against her ribs. "Vincent, don't. Don't what? Don't acknowledge that I've thought about you every single day for 6 years? Don't admit that when you walked through those airport doors, I felt like I could finally breathe again after holding my breath for half a decade? You told me you could never feel that way about me," Olivia whispered. "You said I was like James's little sister. That it would be inappropriate and wrong." Vincent laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I lied. I lied because you were 21 and grieving and vulnerable. Because James had been dead for 3 weeks and I felt like the worst kind of person for wanting his sister. Because I thought the honorable thing to do was let you go find someone who didn't carry all that baggage." The walls come down. Tears pricked Olivia's eyes. "You sent me away. I know. And it was the stupidest thing I've ever done." Vincent reached up and cupped her face with both hands. "I spent 6 years trying to convince myself I did the right thing. 6 years dating women who weren't you, working until I was too exhausted to think, pretending I was fine. And then you came back, and all those carefully constructed lies fell apart." Vincent. His name came out like a prayer or a plea. "Tell me I'm not alone in this," he said. "Tell me you feel even a fraction of what I feel, and I'll fight my father. I'll fight the whole world if I have to. But I need to know I'm not imagining this connection between us." Olivia closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks. 6 years of walls and defenses crumbled under the weight of Vincent's confession. "You're not alone. You've never been alone. I've loved you since I was 18 years old, and leaving didn't change that. Time didn't change that. Nothing changed that." Vincent's thumb brushed away her tears. "Then why are you crying?" "Because I'm terrified. Because loving you feels like betraying James's memory. Because what if we try this and it destroys us both? Or, Vincent said softly, pulling her closer, what if we try this and it saves us both? Then he kissed her, and Olivia stopped thinking entirely. His mouth was warm and insistent, tasting of whiskey and 6 years of longing. She wound her arms around his neck and kissed him back with all the emotion she had been holding inside. This was not gentle or careful. This was desperation and relief and coming home after a long exile. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. I'm not letting you run away again. I'm not running, Olivia said. Not anymore. Confronting ghosts. They spent that night talking, really talking, about everything they had been too afraid to say before. Vincent told her about the women he had dated but could never love. Olivia told him about lonely nights in Paris, walking along the Seine and wishing for something she thought she could never have. They talked about James and grief and guilt, about whether loving each other honored his memory or betrayed it. James loved you more than anyone, Olivia said as they sat together on the couch, her head on Vincent's shoulder. He wanted you to be happy. He loved you too, Vincent replied. He made me promise to look after you. I don't think he meant for me to fall in love with you, but I don't think he'd hate it either. James was practical about love. He believed people should grab happiness wherever they could find it. The next morning, Vincent called his father and told him the merger was off. That he would find alternative funding for the housing projects, even if it meant mortgaging everything he owned. That some things were worth fighting for, and integrity was one of them. Robert Ashford was not pleased, but Vincent no longer cared about his father's approval. He had spent too many years chasing something that was never freely given. New beginnings. 2 weeks later, Olivia stood in her new apartment in the South End, surrounded by boxes and furniture that still needed arranging. Vincent had helped her move, despite her protests that she could handle it herself. He stood in her kitchen now, assembling a bookshelf with an intensity that made her smile. You know, I could have hired someone to do that, she said. Vincent looked up and grinned. Where's the fun in that? Catherine had called the day before, tentatively asking if Olivia would consider being a bridesmaid at her wedding. Not maid of honor, because Catherine understood that forgiveness was a journey, not a destination. But maybe a bridesmaid, as a first step toward rebuilding what they had lost. Olivia had said yes. Not because she trusted Catherine completely, but because she was learning that holding on to anger was exhausting. That sometimes forgiveness was a gift you gave yourself more than the person who hurt you. The doorbell rang, and Olivia answered it to find a delivery person holding an enormous bouquet of white roses and peonies. Olivia Munro? That's me. The card read simply, for new beginnings and second chances. I love you. V. Olivia turned to find Vincent watching her from the kitchen doorway. You're shameless, she said, but she was smiling. I prefer romantic, he replied, crossing the room to pull her into his arms. Besides, I have 6 years of missed birthdays, holidays, and random Tuesday afternoons to make up for. You don't have to buy me things to prove you love me. I know. Vincent kissed her forehead. But I want to anyway. Is that so terrible? Olivia laughed and kissed him properly. No, I suppose not. Full circle. That evening, they visited James's grave together for the first time. Olivia placed white lilies on the headstone while Vincent stood beside her, his hand warm in hers. I hope you're okay with this, wherever you are, Olivia whispered. I hope you understand that love doesn't diminish just because it changes form. That loving Vincent doesn't mean I love you any less. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of autumn leaves and approaching winter. Olivia chose to believe it was James giving his blessing. As they walked back to the car, Vincent pulled her close. What are you thinking about? How strange life is, Olivia said. How 6 years ago I left Boston thinking I would never come back. How I spent all that time in Paris trying to become someone new, someone untouchable. And now I'm exactly where I started, except everything is different. Are you happy? Vincent asked, and she heard the vulnerability beneath the question. Olivia stopped walking and turned to face him. The setting sun painted the cemetery in shades of gold and amber, and Vincent's face was open and hopeful and completely devoted to whatever answer she gave. Yes, she said simply. For the first time in 6 years, I'm genuinely, completely happy. Vincent smiled and pulled her into a kiss that tasted of promises and second chances. Around them, Boston settled into evening, and somewhere in the distance, Olivia could have sworn she heard James laughing with approval. She had returned stunning and untouchable, but Vincent had seen through the armor to the woman underneath. And instead of kneeling, he had stood beside her as an equal, offering his heart with both hands. Sometimes the best love stories were the ones that took years to unfold, that weathered loss and distance and fear before finally finding their way home. This was one of those stories. And it was only just beginning. The end.